Look, we love Linus and his tips, but sometimes a video just gets you so much that you have to kind of react to it.
So, Linus made this video, which is basically just unboxing and reading out the specs, and the title is I'm ditching the AirPods Pro.
Now, unboxing videos are fine, but it really gets our goat when big YouTubers, just on the basis of their large following, make a recommendation in the title.
From unboxing to comparison to recommendation in one sitting of 10 minutes. So let's do the exact opposite, take a bunch of time, do all sorts of tests, and tell you if you should ditch your AirPods Pro for the Sony WF-1000XM4 DHRME style.
Goedendag, we're DHRME, dudes high on really maestro earbuds. First major reason why we challenge Linus on his title and argue that you should stick with the AirPods Pro comes down to what kind of person you are. Linus starts off by mentioning how he's not happy using the AirPods Pro with an Android phone, which is evident with the 2 Android phones he ends up using in the video. But interesting that he does use an Apple Watch though. What a loser.
If you like your gardens, you're deep into the Apple ecosystem, then you can't beat the compatibility the AirPods offer. They can, for example, automatically hand over the connection from your MacBook to your iPhone if you receive a call. In theory, at least.
Being part of this ecosystem myself, I'll be the first to admit that this Apple magic isn't always very reliable. Since Sony doesn't offer any multi-point connections, you'll be left having to switch manually to multiple devices, even if you're in the Apple ecosystem.
When you're operating earbuds, you want the process to be as reliable as possible. And here we have to say that the haptic pressure stems, which may be debatable in the looks department, are more reliable than the touch controls on the Sony. You know exactly where to press on the AirPods Pro since it has a dimple, and you get haptic and audio feedback reassuring you. Gloves, no gloves, cold weather, wet hands, it doesn't matter.
And then we see Linus get super excited about the foam tips the XM4s come with. We had the exact same reaction, but like we said in our XM4 review, there is a certain bias of new things being awesome until you really use and test them past the initial 10 minutes or so that Linus uses them for. Because yes, as he says, foam tips do provide a better seal in your ear canal. We personally found the fit to be good, but not very comfortable. Later on in the video, he does give it to the AirPods Pro for ergonomics and comfort, which is true, which will weigh in if you plan to use earbuds for long stretches at a time.
Once Linus tries the Sonys on, he briefly mentions that he hears his own voice inside his head, and here he's indirectly referring to the slight amount of occlusion you get on the Sonys. But what he misses to mention here is that the occlusion effect is almost non-existent on the AirPods Pro, something which Apple really has nailed with its semi-open design. And not to mention that while the AirPods Pro don't block out the most noise, when it comes to letting in sounds, they do a phenomenal job. We think much better than any other buds on the market, approaching the feeling of not wearing earbuds at all.
Sony has reduced its case size quite a bit since its ginormous XM3, but the AirPods still sport the sleeker and thinner case, which doesn't matter so much except in the case of you shoving these into tight jeans pockets. We don't.
For some unfortunate reasons, Sony don't get phone calls, even though in recent updates they've managed to polish them up. At the end of the day, given the choice for phone calls, regardless whether you're on an Apple device or not, we go for the AirPods Pro. Overall, they're just more of a sure thing when it comes to their microphones. But Linus, since you forgot to talk about this, here are some mic tests. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, testing, 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, testing, 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, testing, 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, testing, 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, testing, 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, testing, 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, testing, 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, testing, 1, 2, 3.
Windy conditions.
Hop, hop, hopsicle, ice, ice, icicle. Test, test, testing. 1, 2, 3. Hop, hop, hopsicle, ice, ice, icicle. Test, test, testing. 1, 2, 3. Hop, hop, hopsicle, ice, ice, icicle. Test, test, testing. 1, 2, 3. Hop, hop, hopsicle, ice, ice, icicle. Test, test, testing. 1, 2, 3.
And with all of these things we talked about, you get the AirPods Pro for a much lower price than the Sony XM4. Now at the time of making this video, the Sony is much more expensive, but Sony's prices swing a lot. Check out the links in the description below for the latest prices. Using those links will help out our channel at no additional cost to you.
But hey, dear Jeremy, you're so biased. The Sonys are so good at so many other things. Why am I talking like that? And yes, that's right. Sony's good at a lot of things. Tell them, Kevin.
When it comes to customizing the hell out of earbuds, Apple can't compete. They have been generous enough to customize what you squeeze, but that's only if you have an iPhone, iPad, or a Mac. Any other device is a no-go. With the Sony, you can customize things like touching, active noise cancelling, sound quality, EQ, and a whole lot more. So if you're a tweaker, you can't go wrong with the XM4.
And while we said that the transparency mode was good on the AirPods Pro, the ANC on the Sony WF-1000XM4 is something else. Again, it's not the best on the market, but it definitely cancels out a lot more sound, owing partly to the new hybrid foam tips and the newly developed V1 processor from Sony. When the world opens up again and we're traveling in crowded planes, this will be an important factor when it comes to choosing between these two earbuds. Here's a quick test to demonstrate.
And hopefully when the world opens up, we limit the number of flights we take, since that's not the best thing for the environment. And while on the environment, Sony has nearly eliminated all plastic from its packaging, making it much more sustainable. The earbuds themselves are made of plastic and the battery isn't replaceable, but hey, it's a start. Apple does well on the environment in general with an environmental report card for most of its products, but not the AirPods line. So when they all run out of batteries and are tossed in favor of the latest and greatest, we will have more to worry about.
When it comes to workouts, both are rated equally for waterproofing at IPX4. If you really had to pick one to work out in, it would be the Sony, also because it seems a little bit more solid. Here's a test.
If battery life is making you give up on life, the Sony might just restore your will to live. With a whopping 8 hours with ANC, the Sony is definitely the contender here for on-device battery life. However, out of the case, the scales are balanced as both give you 24 hours of charging time.
And while on the subject of battery, Sony has now brought wireless charging to the XM4. And in our view, Sony's USB Type-C port is a more universal port. Even most of my Apple devices charge using USB Type-C. Since we test everything, here's a USB Type-C test. Now, we're going to let you hear the sound as well using the dummy jig we have, so you can get a feel of it. It is not quite the ultimate representation of what these buds can do. Man, I'm so disappointed with the tuning out of the box for the Sony. It reminds me of the WH-1000XM4 tuning. Very bassy with almost no treble. The AirPods Pro on the other hand sound much more balanced to me. The Pro for the Sony, of course, is that graphic equalizer with a separate slider for bass. And after some tweaking, the XM4s begin to sound much better. Now, I want to say something. Don't get fooled by LDAC. Sure, theoretically, LDAC can transmit more data and AAC much less, but that's like saying one dish is better because it was seasoned perfectly. Well, that helps, but the quality of the ingredients matters just as much. Similarly, there's a lot more to sound quality than the codec. The driver hardware and the DSP contribute just as much, and the AirPods Pro, despite having only AAC, do very, very well. I would have to give it to the Sony for sound quality after a lot of tweaking. But this was closer than we thought when the XM4s were first announced.
When Linus talks about the design, we do agree that it's mildly frustrating that you can get the AirPods Pro in any color as long as it's white, whereas on the Sony you at least get the choice between one more color. And when it comes to looks, we much prefer the distinctive look of the Sony WF-1000XM4 with the metal accent of the ANC microphone.
So that's been it. In case you were wondering, we love Linus and his stuff, but when we saw this particular video, we just had to talk about it and do a comparison with the AirPods Pro in the process.
You've been comparing YouTubers and earbuds.
And we've been DHRME.
Namaste.